Almost exactly 4 years ago, the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris caught fire. It was one of those 21st century moments that people around the world experience together, staring in horror at live video on their smartphones and televisions. For the people of France, it was especially traumatic, because Notre Dame has been a powerful symbol, both sacred and secular, since medieval times. French President Emmanuel Macron pledged that Notre Dame would be reopened by the end of 2024. He couldn't have known then how hard it would be to keep that promise. But on this Easter Sunday, 4 years later, the resurrection of the great cathedral seems within reach.
The story will continue in a moment.
Flames tore through the roof of Notre Dame on the evening of April 15, 2019, and spread with incredible speed and ferocity, engulfing her 200-foot spire.
Everybody stops.
Jean-Louis Georgelin is the man now in charge of restoring Notre Dame.
And a lot of people in France cry because they feel that something very deep in the soul of France, in the spirit of France, was about to collapse.
Only a heroic effort by the Paris Fire Brigade saved Notre Dame from collapse, as a few staffers raced through falling embers to rescue precious relics. Philippe Villeneuve, the cathedral's chief architect, was out of town that night and raced back to Paris. He was devastated by what he saw. I've said that the little boy who was in love with the cathedral and the architect who was in charge of it died that day, and another man took over and said, "I have to save the cathedral. It's my mission. It's my duty." Villeneuve now shares that duty. If he's the artist who knows every inch of stone in Notre Dame, retired Army General Georgelin is the commander, called back to meet that 5-year deadline.
I will relax only when this will be done.
What does this cathedral mean to the people of France?
The Cathedral of Notre Dame de Paris is in some way the heart of France. For the Catholic, of course, for the Christian, but for everybody. All the great events of France in some way or another took place here in the cathedral.
Napoleon crowned himself emperor in Notre Dame in 1804. In 1944, as Paris was liberated from Nazi occupation, General Charles de Gaulle braved sniper fire to enter the cathedral.
In many ways, you could say that she's the People's Palace.
Agnès Poirier is a journalist and author who lives and works just across the River Seine from Notre Dame. She and her neighbors watched the most horrifying moment the night of the fire, the collapse of that imposing spire.
I remember the scream of the crowd saying no, as if they couldn't conceive such a thing.
That spire meant so much to Philippe Villeneuve that he had it tattooed on his arm.
On dit que j'ai Notre Dame dans la peau.
They say that I have Notre Dame in my skin, he told us. It's very practical because when I have to explain how the spire fell, it's always better to show that from here to there it tipped over. The huge spire, made of oak and covered in lead tiles, crashed through 2 of the stone vaults which form the ceiling of Notre Dame, leaving gaping holes at the top and heaps of broken stone and charred wood on the floor below.
Deuxième élément, c'est l'espèce de tabouret.
The top priority was to shore up the grand cathedral's weakened structure. Huge temporary wooden supports were placed under the surviving stone vaults of her ceiling and under the flying buttresses to save this prime example of medieval engineering.
We have to check every stone in the cathedral, every pillar.
At the same time, a huge decontamination project was mounted to remove lead tiles that had melted from the burning roof and spire and all the toxic lead dust spread by the fire. 4 years on, workers still take extraordinary precautions against lead poisoning. We had to wear disposable hazmat suits to enter the cathedral. Tons of rubble had to be removed. Paintings and stained glass windows were taken away for restoration, and twisted steel scaffolding erected for ongoing restoration work had to be dismantled. So you were in the process of restoring the spire when the fire broke out in 2019. Did your restoration project have anything to do with the fire breaking out?
Une enquête a toujours lieu.
An investigation is still underway, Philippe Villeneuve told us, and no cause of the fire has been identified. But personally, it's unbearable. This fire never should have happened, and it did. Inevitably, I feel responsible.
So, you know...
At that point in our interview, Villeneuve switched to English with a rueful smile.
In reality, I'm totally destroyed.
Really?
Yes. I so want to rebuild Notre Dame is because I want to rebuild myself.
The fire's deeply emotional impact on Philippe Villeneuve was mirrored around the world. Nearly $1 billion in private donations have been pledged to rebuild Notre Dame, most of it from France, $50 million from Americans. I know many people in the United States contributed.
They can contribute again.
They can continue to contribute, huh?
The cash is always running. If I want, give me money, I need.
In the weeks immediately following the fire, all sorts of ideas were floated for how centuries-old Notre Dame might be given a touch of avant-garde.
And all those architects throughout the world said, yes, let's have a roof garden, let's have a golden torch, let's have a titanium spire. You know, even I, for 20 seconds, I thought, to add some 21st century genius to Notre Dame, why not?
Chief architect Philippe Villeneuve had a very simple answer, why not?
Un monument historique, une cathédrale.
An historic monument, a cathedral, is not something to be played with, he told us. Notre Dame had been standing for 850 years with a wooden frame and a lead roof. So wood is the way to go. In the end, President Macron and a special committee agreed to rebuild Notre Dame exactly as she had been, and with the same materials: stone, wood, and lead. How is it that the traditionalists won out?
Well, I think wisdom won.
Notre Dame's signature spire was a fairly recent addition. Images of the cathedral from the mid-1800s show her without a spire and in an advanced state of decay. The cathedral was in great disrepair, was it not?
It was about to collapse, but of neglect, not of fire.
There were even proposals to demolish Notre Dame before the cathedral crumbled on its own. Instead, the French government hired a young architect named Viollet-le-Duc. He created that famous spire. So you are rebuilding the spire exactly as Viollet-le-Duc?
Yes.
Are you using his original drawings?
On a eu la chance.
We were lucky, he said, because it was extremely well documented. We have the drawings of Viollet-le-Duc, the sketches, the surveys. We have everything needed to be able to remake it. 1,000 French oak trees were felled for the new spire, then fine cut by carpenters in eastern France. In other workshops around the country, the cathedral's organ, the largest in France, and many of its stained glass windows were restored. How many workers and craftsmen do you have on this project?
If we take into account all the people in France, it's about 1,000 people.
Allons-y. On the plaza in front of Notre Dame, a huge tent has been erected where stonecutters and sculptors are recreating Gothic gargoyles and adornments damaged in the fire. Philippe Villeneuve supervises every detail.
Et je leur fais mettre les doigts sur des feuilles.
I'll make them put their fingers on the layers of the original sculpture, he said, and then on the layer they're sculpting. So he wants you to feel it, not just look at it.
Yeah.
And that works?
Yeah, I think too.
Danae Leblanc is just 23 years old. sculpting and chiseling to recreate a floral detail carved hundreds of years ago. We try to remake things identically, she said, but we are also trying to understand the intention of the original sculptors. So we look at the traces left by their tools. We were given rare access to the painstaking restoration of Notre Dame as workers and artisans revived the cathedral's exterior
The towers of the cathedral.
and her interior.
Oh my God.
The cathedral's great rose windows have been meticulously cleaned,
Look at this.
and every inch of stone coated with latex, which, when peeled away, leaves the surface gleaming. We found restorers, Mathilde Maire and Aude Massimi, working on painted stone sculptures depicting scenes from the life of Christ.
How old is this?
This part of the cathedral, she said, was built at the beginning of the 14th century. These sculptures are medieval. The restorers are carefully wiping every surface with small cotton swabs dipped in a water-based cleaning solution.
So I think you have to have a lot of patience.
Yes.
Yes, she says, you have to be calm and know that it will take time, but it's a pleasure.
You can see she's wiping away the centuries.
A 600-ton maze of scaffolding has been built inside Notre Dame to support all the work, especially the rebuilding of the spire. General Georgelin took us up through it, 2/3 of the way on a construction elevator. We reached the top, climbing steps and ladders.
This is incredible.
We were standing 100 feet above the cathedral floor, in exactly the spot where the flaming spire collapsed. 4 years ago, there was nothing here but a vast hole.
The drama took place here, and we have to rebuild the vault of the transept. The spire will be there, 66 meters high.
At the top of the old 200-foot spire sat a copper sculpture of a rooster, the symbol of the French people. The day after the fire, Philippe Villeneuve found it on a lower roof, a bit mangled but miraculously untouched by the flames. It has been left as it was found and will be put on display in the restored cathedral. Can I tell you, Villeneuve says, that I plan to put a new rooster on top of a new spire 1 year to the day before the reopening of the cathedral. There will still be scaffolding, but the frame of the spire will again be in the sky of Paris.
And the spire will rest on these 4 pillars you see here. You see?
Be magnificent.
Magnificent, yes, for the glory of God and France.
Recreating Notre Dame's iconic spire.
You took these down 4 days before the fire?
Yes.
At 60minutesovertime.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.